What is going on, y'all? Welcome to 8 Cubes. We have guest host OrdinaryHarry with us here to discuss what we are terming the blip, the brief period in which Marvel Snap was down due to global geopolitics, which is one of the crazier sentences that I have ever said. Harry, I want to know how this impacted you in terms of your relationship with the game, because you have always been someone who's a little bit more critical of the game, a little bit more willing to look at things like this as off ramps, where I have always been, just a dedicated shill as far as I'm concerned. What did this do for you as a Marvel Snap player, looking at it from the outside in? Because I don't believe it affected you in a real way, but did it make you feel any differently about the game?
No, it didn't make me feel any differently about the game because I was, as you said, I'm not completely unaffected by the outage. I don't live in the US. It was just interesting to watch from an outsider's perspective, more than anything. But yeah, just
So,
as you said, it didn't affect me. So it didn't,
okay.
I was just joking about it. I was just having fun. I was just having a laugh. I was just, um, you know how a bunch of streamers, when they go live, they've been checking Google Trends and showing how Snap is doing this or doing that. So what I did, I went on Google Trends and we were trending higher than any other card game in the industry, baby, for those two brief days.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like the weird thing about this to me is this is objectively a bad thing to happen to your game, but it is also the most attention your game has ever had. There was someone in my stream, because I was streaming late the day it was banned. I just literally never turned off the game, so I was still in. And there's someone who came into my stream who showed up. He was like, I'm just here because I heard about this thing happening and this game actually looks pretty cool. And there's probably like a non-zero amount of those guys out there where it's like, this is an opportunity for Second Dinner to actually capitalize to me. Where it's like, one thing you can do right now is do we'll talk about this a bit later, but really awesome compensation. And then that serves as hey, if if you pick up Marvel Snap right now, you're going to get a bunch of free stuff when it has the
Mhm.
largest amount of attention on it ever. I'm not saying this wasn't a bad thing, because I think showing people in the United States that you could be just completely have everything removed from you at the whims of a company that isn't even supposed to be as involved as it is. I saw a report from Paul Tassi that suggested that ByteDance was supposed to have divested itself from Newverse, and Second Dinner was supposed to have removed itself from that relationship as well, and neither of those things seem to have actually happened. And so that meant that ByteDance and Newverse still maintained the ability to unilaterally take the game down. That's the kind of stuff that's scary to a player base. Obviously, Ben Brode has come out and said, we're going to move to self-publishing or find a new publisher or whatever it is that he said, where he was like, we don't think this is an acceptable state of affairs anymore. But it's got to be more than that. It can't just be, oh, we fixed the problem. It has to be like, here is an upside to that. Here is things getting better because of that. And I think they have an opportunity to really sort of change the narrative on their own game in a way that is rare, and they should take advantage of.
Yeah, they can turn it around. There's no thing as bad publicity, I think. I agree with that statement 100%. And yeah, they can look at this as an opportunity. It's very good that they're trying to move away from a problematic relationship with Noovers and ByteDance, because even though they're not the big fish right here, they're just a small fish getting caught in the net that they're casting for the big one. This isn't going to end anytime soon, it looks like. It feels like, um, you know, politics, and one side is pushing one thing and the other side is pushing the other thing. And even though it feels like there's a relative peace right now with a 90-day extension, we don't know what's going to happen in 90 days. It might, like, maybe ByteDance decide, hey, I don't want to sell, or maybe uh, the other side says, hey, we don't want you to operate if you're not going to sell, and so on and
Yep.
so forth. So yeah, it's a difficult situation. The best thing to do is to distance yourself from the problem. And I think the announcement from Ben Brode was very, very good news, and that's the way they should have handled it.
Yeah. I think that the fact that Snap came up so much later than stuff like TikTok is it sort of suggests to me that this is an issue that they had to solve somehow on their end. Like they got their game taken down, and then it was like, okay, how do we get it back up? And obviously, ByteDance's priority is TikTok. Like that's what they care about right now. And so it sort of looks like it was sort of thrown into stark relief for the Snap people. Like, hey, we're tied to a parent company that is too large to care about us. Their concerns are too big. Their concerns are global and like things that involve the president of the United States. Of course they can't care about a game. How are they like, I'm not even gonna like sit here and be like, oh, they're uncaring. There's no world in which the company that runs TikTok is supposed to care about Marvel Snap right now. Like they just can't. That's a ridiculous statement. And that's a scary situation to be in if you're a game company, probably.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think, as I said, they're handling it well. Only the future will tell what's going to happen, and let's hope that this in 3 months we don't come across the same issues.
Moving on to Bullseye, a card that has a ton of power attached to it, but also an incredibly specific game plan that really needs to happen. I feel like this card could either be like the new Dracula or like a card that doesn't even make the cut in discard. Where are you landing on Bullseye so far? Keeping in mind, we both have 0 games played with the card at the time of recording.
Okay. I was very high on Bullseye. Like I thought it was going to be a very, very fun and good card. Then yesterday and this morning when I was looking at possible decks, I realized that it's very limited in its applications. It's not going to fit in a lot of decks, maybe 1, maybe 2 maximum decks that you're going to find to play the card. But now, as at the time of this recording, I am looking at people playing this card, and I realized something that as a card gamer, I didn't read the text correctly, which is what we all do, right? And apparently, the minus power is not at his location. It's
no,
just
it is
all
not.
across the board.
Yeah, it's just like it just hits stuff.
Well, if they don't have Luke Cage, they're kind of in a very difficult situation against a big Bullseye. I'm not gonna lie, like that is a lot of power.
Yeah, that's why I sort of described it as like new Dracula, where it's like one of the things that's been true across all of my tier lists recently is that the discard deck has been really close to being elite for a really long time. And in a metagame that really cares about going tall, it has the ability to do that. And it just got a card that can play for like 14 points of power for 3 energy. So like you have your 3/14 Bullseye, you have your 3/9 Strong Guy, you have your 4 billion Dracula, you have a bunch of stuff where it's like, I'm not going to say you can hit move bounce levels, but like you're in that conversation. And Bullseye is part of what puts you in that conversation. And I think that's a really interesting spot for him.
It is a really interesting spot. It's one more threat that you need to address, and it's one more threat that needs to be addressed by a card that can't really deal with everything, right?
Yes.
So I'm talking about Red Guardian.
Yep.
That's your biggest fear. Red Guardian is going to hit Morbius. Red Guardian is going to hit Dracula. Now it's got another target, but is it going to increase the amount of threats to the point where Red Guardian is not enough? That's my question. But then again, my other question is, do you have room for both Bullseye and Dracula in your deck? I don't know if you do.
I'm not sure you do either, because they sort of push you in different directions, right? Like Bullseye wants you to be more of a Scorn deck. Dracula obviously wants you to be an Apocalypse deck, but Dracula's not really that sad about Scorn. What I think the real thing is with Bullseye in the deck, I think it will fit in the same list, but it's also just like, the deck becomes so much more finicky. Like, as the deck is gaining power, it's becoming more move bounce like. It's sacrificing consistency in order to get that power. Because if you don't draw your Bullseye on time, if you don't draw your Dracula on time, if you haven't found a way to discard your Swarm, because like you have a very specific nut draw, right? It's discarding a Swarm and then also having Bullseye and then also having Dracula and then also having Apocalypse and then also having MODOK. And it's like, you have all this thing and it's just like, wait a minute, that's actually kind of hard to do. It doesn't happen that much. And so you have a really interesting deck where it's like it becomes more finicky, but it definitely gains power. And that might be what that kind of deck needs right now. Notably, though, because Bullseye is like spread power like that, doesn't seem that good against move bounce.
That's that's my that's my issue also. I agree with you 100%. Like those are my main issues with the deck. Basically, the way I phrased it is that in order to make Bullseye work, you need such a high amount of synergistic cards that you cannot afford to have any cards that interact with your opponent's board, aka tech cards, right? So you basically end up playing what? You end up playing a solitaire deck where you're just doing your thing and hoping that your thing is bigger than what your opponent is trying to do, right? Uh, and the question is it bigger than what your opponent is trying to do? Because if you do your whole combo, can you beat move bounce? I think no. If you do your whole combo, can you outpower Mr. Negative that did their own combo because you can't stop them? I think no. So I'm even though I think it's going to be a fun deck, even though I think it's going to be like a cool deck and you're going to see a lot of cool things happen and fun things happen in your hand and your board, at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be a competitive deck. I don't think the card is going to find uh, a place in an A-tier deck. It's probably going to be like maximum B, maybe if we're missing something B plus, and that's where it's going to stop.
Speaking of cards that are like B pluses, Moonstone, really interesting. Like a really, really interesting card that had some real impacts on the metagame. But to me, it has struck me as more of a Moonstone is more of a direction a Victoria hand deck can specialize in than it is a deck unto itself, right? Like you have your base Victoria hand deck, and if you want to go super tall, you have your Moonstone addition to that. Like you can add that package in, you can go Moonstone, you can go Onslaught, you can do that stuff, but you also don't have to do that. You could be a Victoria hand deck without that. And so Moonstone is more of like a what's the word for like in a video game? I should know this. I literally play video games for a living. But like when you have like your level 1 class and then like it branches off into like two paths and like the second specialization there. Like that's what
You mean
Moonstone is.
a subclass?
Yes, Moonstone is like a subclass of Victoria hand decks. The subclass being we've decided to try to go really tall. That's what
Or
the hand decks are about.
or if you want to talk superhero speak, she's like the sidekick of Victoria Hand
Yeah,
and
sure. Sure.
Iron Patriot, sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like that's what she is. She's like the sidekick of Victoria Hand and Iron Patriot. Like if you have those two cards, or if you have Victoria Hand, just Victoria Hand, then you can consider getting Moonstone. But if you don't have them, then you're probably better off getting those cards first than getting Moonstone. She I like the card. I think it's a very fun card. And I was surprised by how good the decks with Victoria Hand, Iron Patriot, and Moonstone were.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said.
She's really interesting because I think her release and like the choice of everyone to investigate that subclass, like as happens very often when a new card comes out, people are like, all right, what's the best place to do this? Turns out the best place was that subclass. But that also sort of left the metagame open because if everyone is playing this like let's go tall deck that looks like a mid-range deck but is actually just a very tall deck, because there's not really a bunch of interaction in those decks because your Moonstone Onslaught stuff, right? Like you end up in a metagame where everyone else can just be like, oh, I'll play a real combo deck. You're half and halving it. I've got an actual combo deck here, and my combo deck goes taller. And I think it's been a while since you've been in one of those metagames, like probably a year or so since it's been like this. And Moonstone does deserve credit for that. And this is like the good side and the bad side of Marvel Snap's release system is that sometimes there's like these knock-on effects that are really cool. Like, for example, if Moonstone doesn't come out, I don't think Mr. Negative is a very good deck. But because Moonstone came out and half the people playing mid-range are now playing Onslaught Moonstone stuff, well, Mr. Negative beats the crap out of that, and suddenly Mr. Negative is a good deck again. And I think that's like, it's cool. It's cool that that can happen, but it is worth sort of understanding that as like related to Moonstone's release and what she is causing to happen rather than intrinsic to anything about the game changing. which is actually what this topic is about. Because of all of the stuff we just talked about, things that matter right now are going really, really tall. What is your favorite way of going tall in Marvel Snap? Just your personal preference of like everyone's playing big stuff. How do I go bigger?
I mean, you just said it.
Mm.
I recently did a couple of runs on Conquest with Mr. Negative, and I just remembered why that deck is so much fun. When you get your combo, when you pop off, there's nothing uh, outside of very specific cards that aren't in the meta right now. There's not much, let's say, that people can do to beat you or to stop you or yeah, you just pop off, and it's so fun because it's so much power on the board. There's so many combo pieces. There's so many things going on. There's so many different ways also to combine your cards. Like, do I mystique my Iron Man? Do I mystique my Gore? Do I, pop off with Wong and Mystique and copy the incredible power with Taskmaster? Like, and also I noticed that there aren't a lot of decks right now that really really enjoy going for an extra turn. So and not a lot of people also running ways to stop that extra turn. So Magic seems like an interesting addition to combo decks that want that extra turn to find their combo pieces, to pull off their combo, to go really tall, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I would say Mr. Negative is my favorite way to go tall right now.
I like the last time I remember Mr. Negative being this good was when we were in the Hela meta, and we'll get to her because she's also kind of responsible for this kind of stuff. But like when I say the Hela meta, I mean like the Hela meta, like when we were in like the thick of it there. Shout out to KSI. From the pen to the whatever. I forgot the lyrics and I'm not gonna sing it, and the only way I can remember the song is if I sing it, and I refuse to sing it in the middle of this. Screen to the ring, to the pen to the king. There it is. All right. The fact of Mr. Negative's existence being like mostly gated by a tech card that people don't have room to play in Mobius M. Mobius, and to a lesser degree by other tech cards that people don't have room to play, stuff like Legion and things like that. It is like it's nice. It's nice to know that in a world where like if things get too weird, you can just whip out the Mr. Negative and no combo deck's gonna beat you, and none of these onslaught decks are gonna be better than you, and you're gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. There's a bunch of weird stuff happening in the Hela space, and it's usually like the same 5 people in High Infinite just like messing around with various shapes of Hela. I've been playing like Ronin Hela, that's a butt deck. I've been playing Ajax Hela, that was a Stefan deck. Butt's been playing Zoo Hela. The point being made here is basically like if you like discard a Gore and then play the card Hela, you get a Gore. I don't know if people are aware of this, but you get a 6/9 that summons the card Gore, and it's actually shockingly easy to discard the card Gore because you always hit it off of a Silver Samurai. So not only are you discarding one of your opponent's cards, you're getting a free Gore. And this sort of like package can just go in a bunch of random crap. And yeah, it like that. I'm not sure it's like good or anything, but it's definitely happening a lot. I know Butt is currently rank 2 in the world with a morph version of the Ronin Hela deck. So yeah, that's a thing that's happening. I don't know. The point I'm trying to make here is that card actually seems better than it was. A lot of people, when Hela came out with the rework, people were like, this card is worse now than it previously was. And I'm fairly certain it is notably and significantly better, and we just haven't necessarily figured out exactly the best way to do it.
I feel like the people who are saying that Hela is worse than it was before are the same people who come into the stream, and when you lose a game because of a card, they immediately say that card is bad and you should remove it from your deck and play something else.
Oh my god.
So no, the reason I'm saying this is because people had the illusion that Hela was good because the immediately previous day was a hot location day with Agatha, and everyone was playing Hela Agatha, and it was good and it was fun. Some people hated it, some people liked it. That's irrelevant. But that's why people were under the illusion that Hela was actually good. But outside of that day, Hela was just a dead card. No one was playing Hela. It was completely nerfed. It wasn't doing anything. It saw a small revival with when they introduced Hellcow, but then Hellcow got nerfed and she was completely gone. The new Hela, I feel like, is very interesting. I think she's very fun, and I think she also. I know I keep repeating fun because that's very important for me. There's a lot of room for experimentation and discovery, and I don't think her best tech was going to be discovered on day one because of the way that she is worded now. It's a completely different text and a completely different ability, if you want to call it that. And I think it's a very interesting addition to decks that may want to run Bullseye also. So you can play like that helicarrier weird swarm deck and just discard a bunch of stuff, and then bring them back with Hela, trigger your Bullseye, get random cards. There's this old deck that I used to play a lot that ran Hela like that, and I feel like she can fit in that deck. I don't know how strong it's going to be. It's another solitaire deck that's very RNG based. And I don't think it's ever competitive, but it's super fun, and that's what I'm interested in trying as well, combining Hela with Bullseye. So yeah, I like the new Hela. I think she is interesting. I think there's a lot of room for experimentation. I think a lot of different decks are gonna utilize the new text of Hela, and that Hela package is gonna fit into a bunch of different stuff until we find the perfect 12, and that's when she's gonna pop off.
I feel like the fact that she's a 6'9" right now, like even outside of like haha 6'9", nice, it's like that number seems kind of high. Like if you're bringing back one thing with her, she's like kind of instantly the best card at 6 on rate, and it's like, oh, that's a weird spot, isn't it? And like that's counterbalanced by, discarding your own card sucks. Don't get me wrong, like it's not a thing that you want to do. There's not a lot of like free and easy tools to do it. It's harder than you think it is, and it requires you making actual deck building sacrifices. Like, but also it's like, wow, 6'9", that's a big number. Like for a card that does what she does.
But it's also like it lands on a random location. You don't really know
Yeah.
you don't really control where the power goes. You get a lot of power, but you don't know. Like you might get 20 power in a location you were winning anyway, and it did nothing, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, like, and that's sort of like the interesting thing about her is because, like, when you look at what she does and the raw numbers, it's too high. Like, her numbers are really, really big. But then when you look at, like, the hoops you have to jump through to get those numbers, the fact that they show up on random locations, like, because Marvel Snap is the way it is, it can support a card like that existing and not even really being all that good. Even though if you look
Mhm.
at just numbers, it's like, that's clearly a messed up thing to do. That's, I think, an interesting dynamic that is one of the things I've been kicking around recently is that it's just a lot harder to make a broken card in Marvel Snap than it is in other games. Like you have to make the numbers really broken because even if a card just basically says win one lane, your opponent is going to be able to win the other two. And so it's like if you have to jump through enough hoops, it's not going to do enough. And when I look at Hela, like my inner designer is like those numbers are too high. There's no way. But then you look at like what happens when you actually play it, and it's like I don't know. I guess it's fine. I guess that's fine. I guess those numbers aren't too high. What do I know? We have a PSA for you, and it's the exact same PSA as I did last week, and it is at the exact same time that I did last week. I was reworking the topics, and I came across this one, and I was like, you know what? I actually have to say the exact same thing as I said a week ago, which is PSA Move Bounce is still the best deck in the game. I don't even know that it's close. This is a metagame that cares very deeply about going tall. Move Bounce is best able to go tall. This is a metagame that has a bunch of decks that fall apart to one piece of interaction. Move Bounce is definitely not going to do that. It takes multiple pieces of interaction because you often have to not just have the interaction piece, but also the piece to delay the timing so that your interaction actually has targets, a la Invisible Woman and Ghost. This means that beating Move Bounce is more about putting two cards together than it is, say, beating Mr. Negative, which is very much about playing the card Mobius M. Mobius, you know? Like, and that is not even to go into Bullseye, where it's like, all right, well, what is Discard trying to do? Discard is trying to play a lot of points. What is Move Bounce trying to do? Move Bounce is trying to play a lot of points. Look at me and tell me which one you honestly think is better at doing that, even with Bullseye. Like, in the heads up, who's gonna win? It's probably Move Bounce, so it probably just got better. Again, this is the deck. It is extremely difficult to play, extremely annoying to play, extremely hard to play against, extremely all of those things. But I do suspect it is the strongest deck in the game.
I agree with you 100%. I think it is the strongest deck in the game, but it also highlights that you can do what you said is very difficult to do in Marvel Snap
Yeah.
previously, in the exact previous topic. I feel like the reason is the strongest deck in the game is because it is being brute forced by numbers right now. All the move cards outside of Human Torch, well, the other two carries of move in Cloak and Dagger and sorry, Dagger, not Cloak and Dagger. I played too much Rivals. Dagger and Vulture. Both of those cards just generate way too much points for too little effort. And at some point, it was inevitable that a deck was going to, show up with new cards coming out all the time that was going to take advantage of that and not require, a huge number of combo pieces to do that, right? You get to copy a big cloak or you get to copy a big vulture. But the reason that they're so good is because they're completely, ridiculously overstudied. Come on, moving cloak, moving dagger, sorry, I keep calling it cloak. Moving dagger one time and getting 12 power, that's outrageous. Moving vulture one time and going to 9 power right below Shang-Chi as well. And then they're both such low-costed cards that you can bounce them, copy them, slap them, do whatever you want with them. And they keep coming back. They keep adding power to your board. You're so unpredictable. And it's power that your opponent can interact with if you play the deck correctly. Sure, it's a difficult deck to play, but I feel like move cards need to be looked at a little bit. They are overstudied.
I agree. I also think, though, like, very specifically, the problem with move bounce is the priority shit. Like, it's the fact that you can't interact with it. Like, the numbers it creates, yeah, okay, those are problematic numbers, but there are a bunch of ways in Marvel Snap to deal with problematic green numbers. We have Shadow King in, like, every deck. It's not the hardest thing in the world to deal with that. The hardest thing in the world to deal with is that you can't actually use those tech cards unless you're playing further tech cards specifically so you can mess with priority, so you can use those tech cards in this one matchup. And that is the problem with move bounce, where it's like, okay, the normal solutions do not apply. Here are the extra hoops you have to jump through. Also, every card you play to jump through those hoops pretty much sucks in every other matchup and is vanilla stats. You are playing Shocker and you are playing a 3/5. And it's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But it's just like, that is, I think, the ultimate issue, is the additional deck building tax that it puts on you if you want your tech to even work.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you 100%. The fact that you basically, yeah, this is true with every deck in Marvel Snap, right? You can build a deck that can counter anything in the game.
Yeah.
But then the question is, how does that deck play into the rest of the meta? If it can only beat one specific powerful list, you're not going to run into the list 100% of the time. At best, you're going to run into it 10% of the time. What about the other 90% of the time? What are you going to do then? You can't do anything.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the opportunity for compensation here that Marvel Snap has. And I realized there's like a kind of a meme going around in the community that is like, I can't wait to get my 20 boosters for the server downtime. And it's like, I honestly think that if they were so out of touch as to do, like, not even like 20 boosters, like, here's a premium mystery variant or whatever. Like, if that's the kind of compensation we get, that is the kind of thing that could kill this game. And I don't think they're that stupid. I realize many of my commenters probably will, but I just don't. And so I wanted to run through what was lost on the NA server and what a fair level of compensation would be, and then talk about why I probably think they should go bigger than that. So we lost out on login rewards, maybe Twitch drops. There are people who may be paid for a VPN at the advice of the devs of this game. There are people who missed out on the games played rewards, the Null and the X23. There are alliance rewards that probably didn't get completed. There are daily quests. There are all of that stuff. All of that is just stuff that people lost out on outside of just, okay, the game wasn't available for you to play. And then on top of that, it's the uncertainty of, will this happen again? My money went into this. Will it be yanked away from me? So all of that to me suggests bluntly that this should be the highest compensation that they have ever given to anyone ever of all time. I'm talking spotlight keys. I'm talking tokens. I'm talking credits. I'm talking gold. I'm talking everything. I'm saying, like,
Lamborghinis,
yes, they should be sending
Ferraris.
us Lambos. They should be sending personal apology letters to my mailbox from Ben Brode. No, like, the point is, this is because doing that is not just like, oh wow, okay, that's good because it makes your customer base happy. This is when I talked about a chance to reclaim the narrative on their own game. No one's going to be talking about here's 20 boosters if you blow the doors off the compensation of this, because this is the highest profile compensation that has ever existed. This is the biggest chance Marvel Snap has ever had to get eyes on it. One really good way to do that is just be like, here is a ton of free crap. Go enjoy all the free stuff. It's gonna be free. Not only will that get more people paying attention to you, it'll sort of, like, I think personally that a lot of the online narrative around Second Dinner has shifted from this is a small indie company, ha 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 ha, to these guys are scummy. I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of people saying stuff like that. And I personally don't believe that, but I don't control the online narrative. And they have a chance to really make good with their audience in a way that very few game companies actually get the chance to do. And I think that is worth noting.
I agree with you.
Mm.
As always, I feel like we see eye to eye on most things. But I feel like people talking about compensation and worrying that and making jokes that they're going to get 30 boosters as compensation are not being sincere.
Sure.
If there's one thing that Second Dinner has shown us, with maybe one exception that I can remember, is that when they mess up, the compensation is always huge. It's always very, very generous and big and like let's take it from the beginning, right? If you remember when they made what they're called events
Nexus events,
in closed the Nexus events in closed beta, they're like, oh, we messed up. Here's the card for free. It was Jane back in the day. It was Jane Thor back in the day. So they gave us the card for free. Then they messed up with Kitty. They gave the card for free. Whenever they mess up, they give the compensation is never stingy, right? They always apologize, with the exception of maybe that mess up with Gambit, with the Gambit variant. But even then, they came back with a stronger compensation once they realized that what they were giving back wasn't enough. And when it happened again, recently, the compensation was extra generous, right? No one's unhappy with the compensation they got. They even made sure, because my big complaint with the Gambit fiasco back then was that the new variant I got was not equivalent to the variant I lost. The new one was very bad. So when it happened again, the new variant, the new Dakin variant, was incredible. It was better than the previous one, right? So I am definitely not worried about the compensation part of this issue, and I am 100% sure that not only are they going to compensate their American audience appropriately, but also everyone that's playing the game to show that the game is still here, it's still strong. We're with you, we love you, and let's keep playing the game and having fun.
I think there's been like a fair bit of, like, I wouldn't call it complaining what we're doing on this episode. I would describe it more as like critiquing, because I don't think we're like whining too hard. But the final topic is always hard for us to come up with, whether it's me and Lambie or me or Harry, because it's got to be something a little bit more lighthearted, something a little bit like just like a thing that one of us has been thinking about for a while, something that's just been rooted in our brain. And I think that, like, as much as we've been talking about how odd the meta is, or how different it is from normal metas, I think it's worth saying that, like, that's good. and I wish it happened more. And because of that, this metagame is really interesting. And I think if Move Bounce didn't exist, we might be in the most interesting metagame we've ever had. Because Move Bounce exists, it's not that. It's just like an interesting metagame. But there's a lot of fascinating stuff happening right now. All the weird Hela builds, all of the super tall mid-range builds. People can play Mr. Negative. There's just a bunch of stuff. And there is one elephant in the room, though, and that is, Jesus, Iron Patriot is in a lot of decks. Like, that card is in a lot of frickin' decks right now. And like, in some of them it's required, and some of them it's just there. Like, I play it in Move Bounce. You don't need it in Move Bounce. You can play like US Agent or whatever. But like, it's probably the best option in Move Bounce. And like, one of the things I've noticed is like, as I show decks on screen in like a tier list, people don't understand what is and is not required because I don't really have time to go over it. And so they'll be like, wow, Iron Patriot is in so many of these decks. And it's like, most of the time he's in those decks is just like, well, he's just good, right? Like, you don't need him to play the deck. He's just good. He's just there. And that's a really awkward spot for a card to exist in. And it's weird because the card is extremely popular and probably the #1 driver of this metagame. And yet, no one seems mad at Iron Patriot. Everyone's just like, this card is like chill. And it's like, that's weird, right? Isn't normally when a card is like at this level, people are furious about it, but even like the high elo players that I know who are normally mad at anything that's too good, they're like, yeah, it's probably a little too good, but it's like, fine, whatever. Like, it's not that bad. Isn't that weird?
I think first of all, I want to admit that Iron Patriot surprised me a little bit. I didn't expect it to be this good. It's a lot better than I thought it would be, mainly because I thought the discount part would be difficult to get, and because the range of cards you can get from Iron Patriot is so huge that most of the cards wouldn't be good. And a couple of things that I've learned after Iron Patriot has come out is that most of the cards in this game are good.
We learned that with RSM too. This is a lesson we've learned twice.
We keep learning that. And that when you play on an empty location on turn 2 and put 3 power there, a lot of the time, your opponent will not even contest you.
Yep.
Which doesn't sound right, but that's what's happening, because 3 energy is not enough to overcome that 3 power plus the extra card that you're going to put there. And I did not account for that when I was talking about that card. So it is much better than I thought. That being said, I don't think it's problematic. Yeah. Like, I don't think it's a card that I want to see nerfed very soon. I think it's a good card, but at the same time, not an oppressive card, because it is attached to heavy RNG. Like, you can get that 4 energy discount, and it can be a horrible card that gives you like a couple of points. So you cannot get that RNG that discount. You can miss on the discount, but it can be a game-winning card. So it's a good card, but it's a weird card at the same time. And I like it. I don't think it should be nerfed. I agree with everyone else. And I hope we see more cards like that in the future, to be fair.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching that video. And thank you to my guest co-host, OrdinaryHarry, for doing this. It was an absolute pleasure, as always. Harry, where can the people find you?
OrdinaryHarry everywhere. If you type OrdinaryHarry, I'm the one you're going to find, whether it's on social media, YouTube, Twitch, anywhere. That's me. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. I feel like on the last topic, I talked about the wrong thing, but that's irrelevant.
That's like half of what this show is like,
yeah.
The way I envision the show is basically like, okay, each topic is a dot, and there's like a bunch of branches from that dot, and we obviously can't talk about all the branches, so we just pick one and go. And so,
like a subclass.
Yeah, like